Welcome to my January wrap-up. We have a lot to discuss because apparently I had a really good reading month in January. So we are going to do what we usually do in my wrap-ups, and we're going to try to go in order. I'm going to talk about what I rated the books. I have my handy dandy reading journal ready so that when I inevitably forget everything that happened in some of these books, I can kind of refer back. But hold on, my stack is like precarious. We read 11 books in January, and a lot of these bad boys are chunkers. So yeah, without further ado, actually, first, I do want to go over some reading stats like we did last time. Like I said, I read 11 books in January. My average rating was 4 stars for the month. I listened/read around 5,500 pages. And out of all of the books that I read, the formats were 6 of them I read physically, 3 of them I read on my Kindle, and 2 I listened to. This book, we'll get into that. Like, you'll obviously see that as I give you my ratings, so I'm not gonna spoil that for you yet. Genres read, I read 6 fantasy books, 3 romance, 1 general fiction, and then 1 nonfiction. So yeah, I think the genres were pretty nicely spread. And yeah, now without further ado, let's get into it. The first book that I started January off with, and subsequently the year off with, is Reign of Shadows and Endings by Melissa K. Rorick. We started off strong. I don't know what I was thinking, but we started off super strong. I really liked this book. I think I ended up rating it 4 stars. It was a little bit slow for me at first just because the writing style is just a little bit choppy. I did read this book in one of my reading blogs last month, so if you want my, as always, if you want my in the moment thoughts, go and watch that video. I will try to remember to link that below in the description. But yeah, no, I really liked this. This is an urban fantasy. It's also considered to be like a darker urban fantasy. And this story follows our main female character. I almost said Thea, but that's the... No, I was close. Tessa. This follows Tessa and the world that she lives in. Basically, the Fae they have only one purpose, and that is to serve the legacies. And one way in which they serve the legacies is by being a power source to them. The legacies are like, I don't really remember, I think it's like direct descendants under the gods or something like that. Like, it's like the gods' children pretty much, and they left the legacies on this planet to kind of like be in charge, and then the Fae were created to serve them. So needless to say, the Fae are kind of not slaves, but like they're like in servitude, but some of them don't know it. Thea, why do I keep saying Thea? Because she's the main character of the last book I read. Tessa, so sorry, Tessa unexpectedly, and again, this isn't a spoiler because it's in like the first chapter, gets unexpectedly chosen to be the source for the Arius heir, which is Theon. Is it Theon St. Orcus? Theon, that's all you need to know. And Theon throughout this book is like, we don't love him. I don't love him. He definitely treats Tessa as lesser than, and is kind of just like, this is my duty, this is how it is, this is how it's gonna be, even though clearly Tessa is like not about it. She spent her whole life trying to be less, fly under the radar, so she didn't get chosen as a source, and then she inevitably gets chosen and is kind of like fighting against it throughout this book. And so you're following that journey, and I don't know, this was just a really fun time. I am excited to get to the next book, especially because the way this one ends is pretty crazy. Like, the last 30% of this book I was locked in, I was flying through, so I am excited to continue. And I do recommend this. Just know that it does have some darker themes. It's urban fantasy. There are fae and magic, and there's just like some darker themes in here. So check your triggers if that's something you're worried about. But I did have a fun time with this, and I do plan to continue the series. I bought book 2, Storms and Secrets, I think it's called, and that is on my TBR cart to be read at some point. But this was a strong start to my January reading month. So yeah, that was book number 1. In that same reading vlog, we then picked up A Fire in the Sky by Sophie Jordan. Again, I just always have to show off this Fairy Loot copy because she's so beautiful. This one was kind of a surprise to me. I think a lot of people, based on the reviews I've seen, have kind of said that this is like ridiculous as a word that I saw. I personally really liked it, and I also rated this 4 stars in that vlog. So again, watch that video if you want my in the moment thoughts while I'm reading it. This one follows, what is the main character's name? I'm really bad with names, guys. Oh yeah, this one follows Tamsin, who is the royal whipping girl for the royal family, which is a long-standing tradition that the royal families have. Like known to be a very prestigious, honorable position, and yet when you're in Tamsin's point of view, you're like, is it though? Because she's clearly just being treated like dirt. And I don't want to give too much away. I do feel like if you read the synopsis online for this one, it does give away like the first 40% of the plot. So if you are someone who wants to go in blind, don't read any of the synopses. But I will kind of briefly give you a rundown. It follows Tamsin. Like I said, she is the royal whipping girl, and her whole life has been protecting her sisters. That's like the whole point of being the royal whipping girl. She decides that once again she's got to protect her sisters because a legendary warrior known as the Beast, that's like they call him the Beast, is at the castle with a bunch of other warriors and basically like demands a wife. You can see where this is going. It's gonna be a little bit of a arranged marriage situation. There are betrayals, twists and turns. There are dragons, as you know, foreshadowed by the cover of this book. And I just thought it was a really fun time. I had a great time reading this. I really enjoyed it. I flew through it. There are some really fun like creatures in the woods, like darker creatures in the woods in here that kind of was giving me a little bit of ACOTAR vibes. I don't have much to say other than I really enjoyed this, and I personally recommend it, especially if you go in with an open mind and don't read the synopsis and just prepare yourself for a silly, goofy, fun time. Sometimes that's all you want. So yeah, that was this one. Like I said, 4 stars again. Highly enjoyed. The third book that I picked up in that same vlog was After the Forest by Kel Woods. Again, beautiful edition. This is another really freaking chunky book. And this one, if you saw my thoughts in that reading vlog, were kind of all over the place. I would be like liking it one minute, and then the next I was like, I kind of want a DNF. And then I would be liking it again, and so I don't know. I landed on a 2.5 star rating for this one, which I know sounds a little bit harsh. I just think that it's not really for me at this time in my life. This had a lot of like historical aspects to the writing. It's based in like Germany. It's very old time. It's like 1800s, or even, no, I think it's actually way earlier than that. 1650 it starts out at. So yeah, you got a lot of like old world talk, setting. The way that they dress obviously is all very pertinent to that time period. And I do think that the writing was really good, and that the research behind this book was really in depth. So if you are a fan of like historical aspects in your fantasy books, that I do highly recommend this. Also, if you're interested in like a Hansel and Gretel fairy tale retelling, reimagining, that is what this is based on. You are following Greta as she basically she bakes. She like has this grimoire that is it's magical, but you can tell that there's like a darker aspect to it, and it's constantly trying to persuade Greta to like, oh, you know, just add a little blood, it's no big deal, like I got very rudely interrupted because apparently I had no storage left on my memory card, so we had to swap those out. Anyway, what was I saying? Greta bakes with this magical grimoire. There is a very dark underlying like dark tone to this entire story, which makes sense because if you know the original like Hansel and Gretel fairy tale, it is just like disturbing, in my opinion. So it had this like, yeah, this just dark kind of underlying tone to it the whole time, plus the historical aspects. I just found it hard for me to get through because, for one, I feel like fairy tale retellings aren't usually my thing, and historical fantasy or historical fiction even isn't really my thing anymore. So I did find those aspects to really slow me down and hinder my reading experience, but I can see why people would like this. So again, if you're into those things, I would recommend giving this one a try, picking it up. Like I said, just wasn't really for me at this time in my life. 2.5 stars. Not a bad book by any means, just not my speed. So that's okay. Again, read that in that reading vlog, so if you want to hear all my in-depth thoughts, go watch that. That was book 3 for the month. Yeah, I don't have a physical copy of the next book, which is Beyond the Wand by Tom Felton. This is his autobiography. I listened to it as an audiobook and it was really, really fun. It did take me a while to get through because I was just like only really listening to it anytime I was, you know, cleaning the house or doing chores. So I kind of broke that up over quite a while. I really enjoyed listening to him talk about his experience, especially with being on the set of the Harry Potter movies. I am a huge Harry Potter fan because I like grew up reading those books, and that's pretty much what, I wouldn't say that's what got me into reading, but it's what got me obsessed with reading and fantasy in particular. Anyway, loved that experience. I also kind of reviewed that audiobook in that same reading blog as well, because I was listening to it in between reading the other books. I don't rate autobiographies either. It just like feels weird to do in my personal opinion. So I did not rate it, but I did enjoy it and I recommend it, especially if you are a fan of Harry Potter. Beyond the Wand might have been in a different video. So sorry if I'm getting these confused. Again, I will try to link the couple reading vlogs down below that these books were a part of. So Beyond the Wand might have been in the other reading blog. The next book that I picked up was Zodiac Academy Heartless Sky. This is book number 7 in the 9-book freaking series. It's actually more books than that because there's like novellas and spin-offs and whatever that I have not read. This series is just a really, really fun time. I think I rated this 4.5 stars. The only thing preventing this from being a 5 stars for me was that it was really, really long, a little bit too long in my opinion, because some of the things were repetitive and repetitive from like previous books. It felt like we were having the same fights, the same conflicts arriving in just like a different font. And so that kind of does annoy me. And there were also 2 characters, if you know, you know, who were dancing around each other this entire book, and it was frustrating, but also they were the only things, not the only things, one of the only things like carrying me through this book and getting me through it is because I want them to be together. So anyway, I do believe that I need to read the next book because of that situation, which I hope it moves forward in the next book. I hope it gets resolved and that they stop playing with each other's feelings because that's just frustrating to read about. Anyway, the other thing that I really wanted to mention about this book is it's hilarious. Like, it's just so goofy and silly, and especially one character, which again I talked about in the reading blog, Geraldine Gruss. She's hilarious. She talks in like alliteration, so she'll like, she's always calling her love interest, or you know, who's like supposed to be the love interest, like Slippery Salmon, for example, and just the way she talks is just so goofy, and I love her. I love her so much. Love these books, love this world. Do think that we probably could have like shaved at least 200 pages off this book, and then it probably would have been a 5 star for me. But anyways, I do plan on continuing this. I do love, like I said, these characters. It's just such a fun time. So I recommend the series if you haven't read it. Although I will say, if you have not read the series and you're like a little bit wary, get through at least the first 2 books, because the first book is a completely different vibe, in my opinion, than the rest of them. Like, these books are classified as bully romance, but I would really only say like the first book for sure, and then maybe a little bit of the second book are bully romance, and then it, you know, it evolves, it gets better, I think. That's my opinion on the series. That was book 5, I believe we're on, of the month. And then in that reading blog that I read Heartless Sky in, I also read Lost and Lassoed by Lila Sage. Finally, we have a tiny, cute little book. And this one is like a cowboy romance, ranch romance, that kind of a thing. You're getting Western vibes, okay? And this follows Teddy Anderson and Gus Ryder. Gus is Emmy's older brother, and you know, Emmy is from like the very first book, so you do get some snippets of them and the animosity between them in those first couple books. And so I have been really looking forward to this one. A lot of people say that this one reminds them too closely of Heartless by Elsie Silver. I can see the relation between the 2 books. I can see some similarities, but I wouldn't say that it's like copy and paste, in my opinion. I do think that they have like their own thing going on. I did really enjoy this. I think I rated this one 4 stars as well. I had a lot of 4-star reads in the month of January. But yeah, like I said, this just follows Teddy and Gus, who they really have a very strong dislike between the two of them because of some history. So they're always kind of snapping at each other. They do have really good banter. I enjoy this. The spice, I would say, wasn't like my favorite, which is honestly kind of weird for me to say for like a cowboy romance, but there were a couple things that I was just like, But overall, 4-star, good time, recommend. I do think this one is my favorite out of the Rebel Blue Ranch series. Again, I read that in that vlog. If you want more thoughts, check that out. Again, another book that I don't have a physical copy of that I listened to on audiobook in that reading vlog was The Storied Life of A.J. Fickery by Danielle, I think it's Danielle Zevin, general fiction, and it follows this older man, AJ, as he's really down in the dumps. He had kind of recently lost his wife, so the tone at the beginning of the book is depressing. He's kind of drinking his life away and just going through the motions, which is sad to see. And then kind of the last straw for him is he has this very prized possession. It's a book by Edgar Allan Poe. I'm trying to remember. Tamerlane, that's what it's called. That gets stolen, and that kind of leads to everything else. He's, you know, really worried about that, wants to find that book because it has a lot of monetary value, and also he values it. And then something literally gets dropped on his doorstep that changes his life, and you just follow him. You follow him through his life. You learn a lot of life lessons along with him. He learns to, you know, like love again and open up, and goes from being like a lonely, curmudgeonly older man to having a lot of people in his circle. So it's one of those kind of stories. It reminded me a little bit of A Man Called Ove by Frederick Bachman, although I do think I prefer A Man Called Ove. It did have similar elements and made me feel kind of similarly. It was a good time. I rated that 3.5 stars. And then that was the end of that reading vlog, and as soon as I finished that reading vlog, I picked up Queen of Shadows, which this is a reread for me. I've been in the middle of a Throne of Glass reread for many, many months, and I finally got back into it and picked up Queen of Shadows because I wanted to annotate, and I had the best time. Like, obviously, because this is a 5-star, million-star series for me, I knew I was gonna have a good time, but I liked this even more than the first time around. Sometimes when I go into a reread, I'm like scared that not that I'm not gonna like it as much, but that it's just not gonna be the same experience. And it's not, because it's a reread, so I kind of know what's gonna happen. I pick up on so much more and just annotated the absolute crap out of this. I can't say much, obviously, because if you haven't read this series, this is smack dab in the middle, but I would say this is like one of my top books in this series. Kingdom of Ash, obviously, is like really up there, but this one is also a favorite. So yeah, 6 stars, a million stars. I can't say much. The characters that I like want to gush over, I can't really do much, but our main female character, I love her. I love her attitude. She's badass, she's feisty, she's got the best one-liners. I love her. She is a girl's girl, and just, guys, if you have not read Throne of Glass, I think I've said this before, but please do yourself a favor and read Throne of Glass. You won't regret it, seriously. So this was the best time ever. Right after that, literally right after, I think I finished it with like a matter of hours until the release of this book. Right after I finished that, I went and picked up Onyx Storm on release day from Barnes, and I did a little bit of a buddy read with my friend Kirsty. She came over and we read together, and yeah. This I rated 4.5 stars. I liked it a lot more than Iron Flame. This is going to be, don't worry, a spoiler-free review. I know so many people are terrified of seeing Onyx Storm spoilers, so you don't have to worry about that from me. I'm not even gonna like really say much because I'm too scared to say much. But I did, like I said, rate this 4.5 stars. Really enjoyed it. I was surprised by this because of how much I really didn't enjoy Iron Flame. I was thinking that I wouldn't enjoy this one, but I do feel like more time was spent on the plot of this and the writing of this, and I think that's why I liked this more. Like, it really showed. So Yeah, I still love this world and these characters. I had a great time being back with Violet and Xaden and the dragons, and I do think we got a lot of dragons in this, because I know that's something that people who like books about dragons want, right? They want like a lot of the actual dragons. I liked this. The plot was good. I do think the pacing was a little bit off, and the ending I was a little confused, but that happens to me. Honestly, that happens to me a lot. I just feel like that's like par for the course with fantasy series books, is that like the last 30% of any book that's not the last book in a fantasy series is gonna be a little wild. So I would love to know, did you guys read Onyx Storm in the month of January? Obviously don't spoil anything for people in the comments because we don't like spoilers. That's all I'm going to say about this for fear of spoiling. But like I said, 4.5 stars, great time, really enjoyed. And then directly after that, I picked up Full Moon Rising by Ruby Dixon. This was another surprise. I didn't think I was gonna like this as much as I did, but I really had a great time with this and rated this 4 stars. Again, I feel like all my ratings this month were somewhere in the 4 stars. Also, I think my camera's like gonna die soon. Let's try to get through this. Anyway, this book follows, what is the main character's name? This book follows Aspith, who is basically, this is kind of like Regency times. She's a holder's daughter, which you can kind of think of as like, not royalty, but upper class. She's from an upper class family, and a holder is somebody who has all these artifacts, and the whole point of this story in this world is that magical artifacts are like everything. Everyone wants them. It kind of tells like what societal level you're in, what class you're in, how many magical artifacts that you have. And Aspith's whole life, she has been obsessed with the guild, sends people out. Oh yeah, the Royal Artifactual Guild. Yeah. So she's obsessed with that. She's been studying it her whole life, and all she wants is to be a part of this guild. So she travels to the main city of Vast Warren to become a part of this artifactual guild, but what she doesn't know is that when she gets there, females are apparently not allowed, and that pisses her off, obviously, for obvious reasons. And basically the guild tells her, like, you have to be married, like you need a chaperone to be in the guild. So of course, lo and behold, she finds a male chaperone, right? This is a fun, silly, goofy romance. Just know that it's between a human and a minotaur, so like you do have some of those aspects. But like, I enjoyed it. I really liked it. Do beware, like if you're not into Omegaverse, if you know what Omegaverse is and you're not really into that, maybe steer clear of this, because it does have some of it in it. But I can kind of look past that, and I enjoyed it. I really liked the archaeological aspect. I found that was really unique. Also, something to note is Ruby Dixon wrote the Ice Planet Barbarian series, which I've read like 6 or 7 books from that series so far, and I like those too, but I think her writing is like better in this, and I think there's like more plot, and I don't know, I just loved the creatures. I love how unique it felt. I don't know that I have much else to say. Like, the setting was fun. The plot was fun. The romance was fun. It was just a fun time. 4-star fun time. That's all I got, guys. Last and favorite book of January was Blood and Steel by Miss Helen Schurer. Hopefully I'm saying that right. This is book 1 in the Legends of Thesmar series. I have heard nothing but good things about this series, and for a good reason, because I also highly enjoy this. I gave this 5 stars, and this is a high fantasy romance situation. It follows Thea. That's why I kept saying Thea for the first book. This story follows Althea Zoltaire, aka Thea, as she's like in this alchemy program to become an alchemist, and she lives also at a guild where they are training warriors, alchemists, etc. And she's in the alchemy program because females, again, aren't allowed to wield blades, but it's due to this old prophecy that basically said when the Daughter of Darkness wields a blade, that'll be like the end of times. I'm completely butchering that, but it's kind of the vibes. And so they're like, no, females are no longer allowed in the guild. So she grows up in that kind of world where females aren't allowed to wield blades, but that's all she wants to do. So she kind of sneaks away from her alchemy classes and is constantly like hiding in the woods watching the shield bearers train, and she'll kind of like go through the motions of training herself, but like she can't actually train. I find that that part, like that aspect was really fun. And then of course you have one of the famed warriors, they're called war swords. They come to the guild, and obviously you're gonna have some tension between one of them and Thea. An opportunity presents itself to Thea, and she kind of takes hold of that. She wants to prove herself. So you follow that journey of her trying to prove herself so that she can become a warrior and she can fulfill her dreams. And then the whole time along the way, you have this great banter and tension between the MMC and Thea. And yeah, it was just a really good, fun time. This book gave me like Witcher vibes, like very much Witcher vibes, but also a little bit of Game of Thrones vibes because of like the politics and stuff. So if either of those series are something that you enjoy, then I think you would enjoy this as well. I did also just finish the second book, but that's for another time because technically I finished it in February. But yeah, this was 5 stars for me. This was a great time, and this was my last book actually finished in January. Highly recommend. There's also magic and like really dark creatures in here too, which seems to be something that I really like in my fantasy books. That was the very last book of January. If you made it to the end of the video, thank you so much for watching. I hope you had a great first month of the year. I hope you had a great reading month. I would love to know what you guys read. Did we read any of the same books? Like I said, let me know if you read Onyx Storm, but don't spoil anything. I hope that everyone has a great month of February as well. Reads lots of good books. Again, thank you so much for being here. I will catch you in the next video.